Hello! This is episode 0 of my new series and project, Configomatic. And in this episode, I'm just going to talk about really what the problem is, why I'm doing this, and really, well, there's a couple of reasons for that. The problem that I'm trying to solve is that whenever I spin up a new VM to do a project, or just to mess around with or test something out, there's a lot of really repetitive stuff that I end up doing over and over again, installing certain things, configuring Samba, obviously installing a lamp stack, and that stuff is, it's the same most times, and doing it all on the command line is a big pain. And so the goal of this is to generate a really nice web interface where you can type in what you want to happen. So we're going to start with adding users and groups and things like that, and slowly get more advanced, including adding aliases and other commands to the Bash RC and Vim Rc files to solve a lot of this repetitive configuration. And also, as an exercise, I'm planning to hopefully to write it in Rust and WebAssembly, because that's a technology that I think is really interesting, and I want to start, I have quite a lot of other projects that I think it would be useful for, and I think this would be a good opportunity to start, and on a relatively simple project, but still something that I think would be useful, and hopefully it will be useful for other people. So I've got a GitHub repo here, which you can find the link to in the description, which hasn't got much in it at the moment, but will do soon. And soon, when there's actually some code there and stuff there, I'll be putting it on my, hosting it on my website. So you can access it there if you want to use it, or you can use the GitHub code directly and host it yourself. Okay. So this is just a fresh install of Ubuntu on Virtualbox, which I have already SSH'd into in Putty. Now, obviously, if you set this stuff up once and you're using a system like Proxmox, or even if you take a snapshot of it with Virtualbox, you could just spin up new ones based off of that. Which is great if you're doing that, but often that's a lot more difficult if you're using a cloud provider to get a server, and obviously the first time you still have to do all that configuration. So I'm going to go through some of the normal configuration steps that I do, and then hopefully next time we can start thinking about how we're going to turn that into code, how we're going to automatically generate a bash script to do this stuff for us. Some things are probably going to be easier, like the first thing is sudo apt update. Oh, if I can spell it correctly. So that is the first thing. And then we will be... I think it's working. Once we've gone through that, then we will have a look at how to convert those into the bash script. For simple commands on the command line, it should be relatively simple, but it may be more interesting when we're doing things like adding aliases and configuration details to Bash RC, and because that might actually require some more logic to figure out where to put them in, but we'll get onto that. This does not... Well, that's really fun. I don't think it's connected to internet. Obviously, it is working on the LAN. Okay, so I suppose one of the other things that we can do, if I might try and I'll fix that. But one of the things that we can do in the meanwhile is with Bash and Vim, that there's a lot of really useful aliases and settings that we can set up, and they're a bit of a pain to put in manually, and especially if you have to do them for every user. And so we'll have a look at those. And users is another thing that I think would be one of the first and most useful things to do. And so I will just go through adding a user so we can, so normally to so in your home directory, each user has a bash rc file, which we can see here. And you can see there's a lot of configuration stuff that runs every time you start it up. But there's one thing that I noticed, that this is a bit difficult to read. So one of the other things that we're going to change is the Vim Rc settings. Because we can change the color. So for example, here if we go Colo Desert is one pretty good one. That makes it easier to see. And there are a bunch of other color options, but that's a really this is a useful one. And another one is, and there's quite a variety of different color settings that you can use, and you will be able to select which of those ones, and then it will set it automatically. Okay, so in the Vim Rc, there is a bunch of alias files here. And these will allow you to type longer commands in a in a shorter manner. So, for example, if we exit out of here, we can instead of going LSAL, which I much prefer because it gives you a lot more information, you might be able to type something like LL gives you something similar, or you can, or we can set one that does L, and there are lots of other really useful commands that we can put in. One of the another really useful one is that very frequently whenever you make a new directory, so if I make a new directory test, well, often when you make, almost always when you make a new directory, you want to go into it, and so you're immediately going to cd into it. And so there's a shortcut as well that we can do that allows you to do both of those in the same steps. So first off, before we go into the bash rc file, I'm going to go back out into the root directory. And I am going to add a Vim Rc file, which is really useful. Here we are. So what this will do is it will allow me to those settings that I did automatically. It will do those automatically, so I don't have to type them in every time I open something in Vim, which is my preferred editor, command line text editor. So what we should be able to do here is insert set number, which is another really useful thing. You can see here that this gives you this gives you line numbers, which is a very useful feature to have, and also colo desert, which is what I put before. So now, if we go back into there, you see now those color and line settings are all done automatically, and we won't have to do them again, at least on this user. And that's one of the problems with these RC files, is that they're user specific. So a lot of this alias and configuration stuff you'd probably want for every user, but you'd have to do it all manually. Now, another thing that we're going to do there is we're going to set it to configure GitHub automatically, which is really useful. So it takes your SSH key and it logs into GitHub automatically. So you don't have to do that when you open up a new terminal. But obviously that would be something that you'd want to be different. So when we go to make Configomatic, there'll be some things that are global and apply to all users. And there are some that we'll make specifically. So now if we go into we want to go .bash rc. Now we can see that we can actually see it and you have 9 numbers. Though obviously you can turn these things off. For example, if you go set no number, then they'll go away. But I don't prefer them, so I'll add them. I'll probably make a full tutorial on Vim later, if that would be good, because it's got a lot of useful things in it. So now we can add. So this is one particularly. That's setting to this tree. That's not what I want. So now, this is a really neat piece of code which should allow us to do that operation from earlier, making a directory and going into it a lot easier. And this will be another one of those things that we will allow people to add automatically into the bash rc. So let's see if that works. Now it's not found, but that doesn't seem to have liked that. Let me have a look. that is bizarre. So that is it. Normally works, and it's normally very useful. But hopefully I will get that sorted out for next time when we actually go to put it in, and hopefully I'll be able to show you next time what that error actually is. So one of the other things that we will be doing is adding users, because I often, when you make a server, that you're going to be using it with other people, and it makes life a lot easier if you can actually see what who has done what. And as we're hopefully going to set up Samba next time, that also is going to be useful, so everybody can have their own individual Samba login. So we are going to do that. We just go. I'm just going to call it test, and just for this purposes, I'm going to call it test. So now we could use this account. So we can go su test, and that's great. Just one problem is that also a lot of accounts we want to have be able to use sudo because there's a lot of things that require elevated privileges. And so another thing that we often want to do is, and now obviously I can't do that here, so I will su back to. So now I will, and as I say, the bash rc file runs every time you go in, and I will fix that for next time. So what we can do is we can go sudo user mod like ag sudo test. So now hopefully test should be in the sudo group. So let me just test that again, test, and it's worked. So now I'm in as root, so that shows that the new test account now has admin privileges. So let me su back to config. So another problem that often comes up, I've found, is that if you are using Samba to remotely edit stuff on a server, or you are using, for example, Apache and PHP or some other program that edits files, they obviously need permission to do that, but it's so I personally often end up just setting things to 777, so they're wide open and anything can have privileges, because it's a pain to can be annoying to configure some of the permissions. But a really nice way around that is to set up a group that owns everything, and so you can have somewhat limited permissions. But when I've tried to do that in the past, I found that when a user makes a new file, it's always set to their group. So for example, if we go back here, we can see that everything in config's home directory, this is the user, it's owned by config, and the group config. So this means, let's say if we had something in dub or somewhere else that we were working, that unless we opened it up to 777, data or anything else wouldn't be able to access it. And it's a pain to be able to manually chown everything to change the ownership. So a really neat trick that we can do is we can do sudo user mod and then do tac g, and that changes a user's primary group. And so that means that whenever they create a file, it will be created with that new group. So what we can do is first, if we create a new group, so that will be, remember to do that. So if we go sudo group add, I'm just going to call this admin for this, but you could call it whatever you want, and you might want to have different groups for different applications or for different levels depending on how you're setting it up. So this will be admin, and now we can do sudo user mod tac g, and then we say admin, which is the group, and then we do the user, which in this case is config. So now if we go back, we can see that everything that used to be owned by the group config, because associated with that user, has now been changed to admin. And any files that I now create with this account will similarly be with that admin group. So then what I can do is I can change files to 775, and I can add data or other users to that same group so they can all work on the same files, but it's still clear who's edited things. This is another example of something that would have to be done for each user individually that you wanted it to happen, and also you'd have to add users to it. So for example, I tend to use Apache, so if I'm in order for Apache to access things, I need to add data, or at least have it permission, so you can add it to the groups, and hopefully that will be another thing that this will be able to configure automatically. So this shows some of the some of the things that we want to manually configure, and there's a lot of really neat things, and I'll hopefully be able to show you some more next time. And although this is powerful and down the line it will make our lives a lot easier when we're actually using it, there's a lot of messing about that tends to happen when we're setting it up, and so this hopefully Configomatic will be able to create a web interface that will make a bash file that you'll just be able to execute once, and it will set all this up for you. Okay, so hopefully you will tune in next time, where we will sort out some of the issues, for example in the bash RC, and might go through a couple other things that we're going to add, including things that we're going to install, and start thinking about how we're actually going to make the program and what the logic is going to be soon. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.